Have you ever received something you desired so quickly that you actually felt guilty about it? Maybe you thought of someone and they texted you within minutes. Perhaps you needed money and an unexpected check arrived the next day. Or you wished for an opportunity and it landed in your lap before the weekend ended. And instead of celebrating, you felt suspicious, uneasy, like you'd somehow cheated the system. That discomfort isn't random. It's the sound of your conditioning cracking. Let me tell you about Sarah, a graphic designer I once knew. She'd been manifesting a new client for weeks, visualizing, affirming, journaling, the whole arsenal. Nothing. Then one Tuesday afternoon, she stopped trying. She was exhausted, honestly. She made herself tea, sat on her couch, and just exhaled. Within 2 hours, an email arrived. A dream client, perfect project, better money than she'd even asked for. Her first thought wasn't gratitude. It was, this can't be real. What did I miss? What's the catch? That's the speed trap. When manifestation happens without the expected struggle, suffering, and time investment, we don't trust it. We've been trained, deeply, systematically trained, to believe that anything worthwhile requires a prolonged battle. That time itself is the currency of deservingness. 6 months of effort? You've earned it. 6 hours? You must have gotten lucky. 6 minutes? Impossible. Suspicious. Probably a mistake. But here's what nobody tells you. Time is not the validator of your worthiness. It's the measure of your internal contradiction. Society has sold us a story where struggle equals value, where waiting proves commitment, where exhaustion is the receipt that justifies your reward. We wear our burnout like badges. We apologize when things come easily. We've confused the obstacle course with the destination. And when something manifests quickly, when reality rearranges itself without demanding your suffering as payment, it doesn't feel miraculous. It feels illegal. This is the first barrier to fast manifestation. Not your technique, not your desire, not even your belief. It's the deep, bone-level assumption that speed itself is evidence of something wrong. That ease disqualifies the outcome. And if you didn't bleed for it, you don't really have it. So let me ask you this. What if the speed isn't the problem? What if your discomfort with it is the very thing that's been slowing you down all along? We've been taught to treat time as a fixed external reality, a river we're floating down, unable to speed up or slow down. But in the realm of manifestation, time functions differently. It's not a container you're trapped inside. It's a symptom, a feedback mechanism, a measure of one thing and one thing only: internal coherence. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to tune into a specific radio station. You turn the dial and you hear the song you want, but it's mixed with static, fragments of other stations, crackling interference. You're getting the signal, but it's not clear. It's not clean. So what happens? You keep adjusting. You keep turning the dial back and forth, trying to lock in. And the more you fidget with it, the longer it takes to stabilize. That's what's happening inside you when manifestation feels slow. You want the relationship, but you're also afraid of being hurt again. You desire financial freedom, but you're simultaneously convinced that money is hard to come by. You're calling in the opportunity, but your body is braced for rejection. You're broadcasting multiple frequencies at once, and the quantum field, the invisible intelligence that organizes reality, can't collapse into a clear outcome because your instructions are contradictory. Let me give you a concrete example. My friend James wanted to start his own business. He spent months doing all the right manifestation practices: vision boards, affirmations, visualization before bed. But nothing moved. Then one day, in a moment of brutal honesty, he admitted to himself, "I don't actually believe I can do this. I think I'll fail. I think I'm not smart enough." The moment he acknowledged that contradiction, the moment he stopped pretending his desire was singular, something shifted. Not because he fixed the belief, But because he stopped lying to himself about it, within 2 weeks, he met a mentor. Within a month, he had his first client. The manifestation didn't speed up because he became more positive. It sped up because he stopped sending mixed signals. This is the truth that most manifestation teachings skip. The field isn't withholding from you. It's not testing you. It's not making you wait to teach you patience. It's responding perfectly, precisely to the totality of what you're transmitting. And when that transmission is split, when you're simultaneously wanting and doubting, hoping and fearing, claiming and apologizing, the result stretches. Probability doesn't collapse. It hovers. Time, in this sense, is not neutral. It's not just passing. It's the distance between your contradictory states. And the moment those states align, when your thoughts, emotions, and nervous system all point in the same direction, time compresses. So here is the question you need to ask yourself. What am I saying yes to with my words, but no to with my body? Where am I split? Here's where most people get tripped up. They think alignment means mental clarity. They think if they can think the right thoughts, say the right affirmations, and visualize the right outcome, they've done the work. But manifestation doesn't happen in your head. It happens in your nervous system. Your mind can declare, I'm ready for my soulmate. But if your body is still clenched from the last breakup, still flinching at intimacy, still armored against vulnerability, you're not coherent. You're fragmented, and fragmentation creates lag. Let me tell you about Maya. She was manifesting a promotion. Every morning, she'd stand in front of the mirror and affirm, I am the director. I lead with confidence. I am already successful. She believed it mentally. But every time she walked into a meeting, her shoulders would curl inward. Her voice would soften. She'd second-guess her ideas before she even spoke them. Her body was still operating from the identity of someone who needed permission, someone who had to prove herself, someone who wasn't quite enough yet. The manifestation wasn't slow because she lacked desire. It was slow because her nervous system hadn't received the memo. True alignment, true coherence, happens when your body relaxes before the evidence arrives, when you stop bracing, when you stop performing, when the outcome feels so inevitable, so ordinary, that your system treats it as already done. Not because you've convinced yourself, but because the internal fight has stopped. This is why people who manifest quickly often can't explain how they did it. They'll say things like, I just knew, or I stopped caring, or it felt like it had already happened. They're not being vague. They're redescribing a somatic shift, a moment when the body stopped preparing for battle and started inhabiting the result. Think about something you know is true, that the sun will rise tomorrow, that your best friend loves you, that your coffee will taste like coffee. There's no efforting in that knowing, no convincing, no daily affirmations to maintain it. It's just settled, embodied, done. That's the state fast manifestation requires. Not hype, not forced positivity, not mental gymnastics, just a nervous system that has stopped oscillating. And here's the paradox. You can't force your body into coherence. You can't think your way into embodiment. But you can notice where you're still fighting, where you're still defending, where you're still waiting for permission. And in that noticing, without judgment, without urgency, the system begins to soften. So ask yourself, where in my body am I still braced for disappointment? Where am I still armored against the very thing I say I want? You'd think the biggest enemy of fast manifestation would be disbelief, or fear, or past trauma. And sure, those things matter. But there's something that sabotages speed even faster, even more consistently. Talking about it too soon. I know. It sounds superstitious. Like some old wives' tale about jinxing your luck. But it's not about magic or mysticism. It's about identity and stabilization. When you manifest something quickly, when the shift happens internally, before external evidence shows up, there's a fragile window, a grace period. Your new identity is forming, but it hasn't fully solidified yet. Your nervous system is adjusting. Your energy is reorganizing. And in that window, silence acts as a stabilizer. Here's why. Every time you explain what you're doing, you reactivate the old identity, the one that needs validation, the one that has to justify, the one that's still trying to convince others and yourself that this is real. You pull the process back into the realm of effort, of sequence, of time. You reintroduce the very patterns you just exited. Let me tell you about Daniel. He'd been stuck in a dead-end job for years. Then something clicked. He didn't even know what it was, just a quiet internal. Yes, within days, he had an interview for a role he'd never even applied for. It came through a random LinkedIn message. Before the interview, he told everyone, his family, his friends, his co-workers. He explained his manifestation process, his vision board, his affirmations. He wanted to share his excitement. But with every conversation, he felt his confidence waver. By the time the interview came, he was back in the old energy trying to prove himself, second-guessing his answers, hoping instead of knowing. He didn't get the job. 3 months later, another opportunity appeared. This time, he told no one. He didn't post about it, didn't update his status, didn't even mention it to his closest friends. He just moved. He interviewed. He got the offer. He accepted. Only then did he share. The difference? In the second scenario, he stayed in the result. He didn't exit the state to perform it for others. This isn't about secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's not about being withholding or distrustful. It's about protecting coherence. When you're aligned, there's a natural quiet. Not because you're hiding, but because there's nothing to explain. The knowing is complete. It doesn't need external confirmation to stay stable. The field responds to states, not narratives. And every time you narrate, you pull yourself out of the state and back into the story of becoming. Speed requires that you stay in the state of being, even when no one else sees it yet. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you feel the urge to announce it, defend it, explain it, or justify it before it's fully formed, you haven't fully embodied it yet. And that's okay. But recognize that the announcement is evidence of internal wobble, not external readiness. Ask yourself, am I talking about this to share joy or to seek confirmation? Am I celebrating or am I still convincing? There's a moment in every manifestation journey where you hit a threshold. You've done the inner work. You've aligned your energy. You've clarified your desire. You feel different, lighter, more certain. And then you panic because nothing's happened yet. And in that panic, you do the worst possible thing. You add more techniques, more affirmations, more visualizations, more scripting, tapping, meditating, manifesting rituals. You layer on intensity, thinking that volume will speed things up. But here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Once coherence is present, repetition becomes interference. Think of it like planting a seed. You put it in the soil. You water it. You place it in the sunlight. And then you wait. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You don't add 5 different fertilizers at once. You don't replant it in a different pot because you're impatient. You trust the process and you leave it alone. But we don't do that with manifestation, do we? We panic. We overwater. We add more techniques not because we need them, but because we're uncomfortable with stillness. Because waiting feels like inaction. Because our culture has convinced us that effort equals results. Let me tell you about Rachel. She'd been manifesting a specific apartment for weeks. She knew exactly what she wanted: location, layout, price, everything. She visualized it. She felt into it. And then one day, she just stopped. Not because she gave up, but because she realized she was done. The desire was set. The alignment was there. She didn't need to keep affirming it. She didn't need to keep convincing herself. She just lived her life. 2 days later, the listing appeared, exactly as she'd imagined. She saw it, applied, and got it. No competition, no stress, no drama. But here's the key. Those 2 days weren't waiting. They weren't manifesting harder. They were integration. The field was rearranging. Reality was reorganizing. And she didn't interfere. This is the trap of doing more. Intensity amplifies urgency, and urgency signals, not now. When you're frantically repeating affirmations, desperately visualizing, obsessively checking for signs, you're not affirming the outcome. You're affirming the lack of it. You're operating from the energy of, it's not here yet, so I need to keep pushing. And the field responds accordingly. Not because it's punishing you, but because it mirrors your state. Once coherence is present, once the internal shift has happened, your job is not to keep manifesting. Your job is to not disturb what has already stabilized. Restraint becomes the discipline. Stillness becomes the practice. Trust becomes the technique. So ask yourself, am I taking this action because I'm aligned, or because I'm afraid it won't happen unless I do more? Am I expressing my desire, or am I trying to force it into existence? Here's what most people miss about manifestation. It's not about getting. It's about becoming. You can manifest from desire. You can manifest from belief. You can even manifest from desperation sometimes. But those manifestations are inconsistent, fragile. They come and go. They feel like luck, not inevitability, because they're rooted in mood, not identity. Speed becomes consistent. Speed becomes your default only when you stop trying to get something and start operating as the person who already has it. Not as a performance, not as a costume you put on during your morning routine, but as a lived, embodied, naturalized identity. An identity so deeply integrated that it doesn't need evidence to stay stable. An identity that acts, speaks, chooses, and moves from authority without tension. Let me tell you about Marcus. He spent years trying to manifest financial abundance. He did the techniques. He raised his vibration. He cleared his blocks. And things would improve, then plateau. Improve, then plateau. It was exhausting. Then one day he stopped asking, how do I get more money? And started asking, who am I when I'm financially free?